Well, welcome back to the 1776 engine build. Just been out and collected a parcel. In the parcel we've got a load of parts that came that we ordered. We've got us new oil pump. We are going for a 30mm oil pump, so it's going to be larger. We've got some modifications on the engines to accommodate the extra width. But apart from that, it should be straightforward on the build. So let's get back straight into it. So one thing I've been doing today is I've been cleaning up the threads on the rods, all the case studs, I suppose, if you want to put it. The case studs that come out, I've been attaching all these back on the block. Obviously we did have the holes made bigger, up to 90.5 for the 1776, so I'd take them out. So all we're doing is reinstalling them. Before reinstalling, all I'm doing is cleaning up the threads to ensure that the nuts will go on correctly at the end for the heads, but also so that when I'm screwing in the screws there, they're actually going in. We've still got some threads showing. I expected that. If I wanted to tighten them up a little bit more, I could do what I've done here. And I've put a couple of nuts together, tighten them up, and then use that to turn the bolt or the stud into the case. Sometimes you have a little bit of problem with when you come to take the engines apart, but the studs come out as well. But I prefer them to stay in the case. So we'll just try and tighten these up. And there we go. That's as much as I got on that one. So about another quarter of a turn or a quarter of a thread in. Not very much at all, really. Get them back off, and then move on to the next one. So we just got. So we've now got them all in. We know that the face here is clean because when we had the case cut, they also did the surface for us. So we know that's fairly clean. Next thing we're going to be doing is we're going to be installing some base gaskets. These are homemade. They don't do a 90.5 base gasket. So what I did, I used some gasket paper and cut them out using an old cylinder. So that will go in there, obviously, on the bottom of the piston and barrel. So we've now got to the stage where we're going to fit either the alternator or generator stand, and obviously we are going to use new gaskets on here because you've got a bit of pressure coming up this area. I think this is the only place where it vents. Obviously it vents through that pipe. We've cleaned all that out. That's been in the cleaning bath. So we've got everything out of there. It's nice and dry in there and fresh, ready to go. So I don't think we need any more gasket on this other than what you get with the kit. So we're just going to slip these on. And again, I've cleaned up all the threads, so we shouldn't have any problem putting that on there. So obviously you've got the 4 washers that go on, and then the 4 nuts. So that's another section on. While we're up here, what I may do, I may put up the oil cooler. We'll fit that up onto the engine, get all that in line. So we've got us mounting plate and we've got us oil filter. So it's important that we fit the right seals for these. And what you'll find in the kit is you find two types of seals, thin ones and thick ones. Let's get them all out. Now that one's a little bit thicker than that, but we are using this one on our filter. Not sure what the thick one is for, possibly for on there when you're mounting one that's not a doghouse. But certainly when I've been building these together, we've always used them on the mounts that's there. So that will go on there. And obviously that you then put on the adapter, and we use the same ones, or I have done, I've used the same ones on the back of the oil cooler itself. Now obviously you can't get the oil cooler on there in two parts, so you're going to assemble it. Fairly easy to assemble. 10mm nut on the back. So we'll pop in a couple of the thin seals. And then attach the cooler onto the adapter. And then once we've got all that fitted up, tightened up, we can then transfer that onto the oil cooler. You've got two nuts underneath. You can get to these once you've got the cylinders on, but they are a bit fiddly. I prefer to put it on now, and then you've got one at the other side. They're 13s. So that's our next step. We'll attach that correctly, put it all together, and then that's the next bit done. Now one thing that we have found, if we are fitting a wider pump, which we are, so obviously it's 5mm longer than the standard, is that the bolts that come out of here, the studs that come out of the case, may not be long enough to take the extra clearance. As you can see on this one, that's your standard pump, so the thickness there is quite different. So we need to add some length on these studs. So you can either replace the studs with longer studs, or you can simply wind out the studs themselves so they do the same job. What we're looking at here is when we put that in place, well, do it this way, just to give you an example. At the moment we've got enough there for the width of the nut with the cover on, but nothing else. So what we need to think about is, do we need to wind out these a little bit more to actually fit the pump? Because obviously we've got that extra width going on. So what we've done is we've attached a couple of nuts to the stud and wound it out. Now what we're going to do is wind it back in to the point where it used to be. So at that point, given the length that we've got in them two there, and that one there, and that one there, this is a little bit short. That's now going to clear, that is, and that is. So we've wound these out, and I'm just showing you the example on it. So there. So we're going to install the pump. I'm just going to put a bit of oil around the edge, so it's not bare metal trying to get past the bare metal. So position that. We've already got a gasket on there, so we'll position that over the hole. Now obviously we don't want to damage this by trying to hammer it in, so what we're going to do is just going to tap it lightly with the rubber mallet. So that looks to be all the way in. Now obviously things like these are going to be dry, so again we'll oil these up before we insert it, make sure it works properly. So just oiling these up with a little bit of oil. There we go. Straight down the end of the pump centre there doesn't match up with the end of the cogs, but maybe that's how it is. We'll just, like I said, we'll oil these up thoroughly, make sure there's a free movement, and then we'll slot this in. I can already see on the cam that the wheel needs to go in that direction. There we go. we've got that fully home now. Before I go any further, just going to test the rotation. So obviously these should move as we turn the crank over. Yep. So we've got good rotation there. We've got nothing catching. Nothing's going to hit. There we go. So nice and smooth. So once again, you get a new gasket in the kit. Clean off that just to make sure it's okay. And then we're ready for pouring them special nuts on. Now I know there will be some torque settings for that, but I've just put it on now so we can get that job out of the way. Obviously, so we've now come to put the cylinder on. I'm going to start with number 3. No particular order really, but it is the easiest to put on, I find. So what I've done is I've positioned the casting mark inside with the arrow towards the flywheel. I've got my base gasket on. These are specially cut because you can't get these, so I've had to specially cut these with some gasket paper. What I'm going to do is I'm going to line it up onto that one there, and then we're going to drift the pin in and put the circlip on. So let's see how this goes. We need to straighten that up so it's level. So what we should be able to do is look through that piston gudgeon pin hole and then gently tap in. So we're almost at the end. Usually you hear a little bit of difference in noise. There we go. So that's now in at the end. And because we've done number 3, we should be able to use as pliers. There we go. So we've got that in place. Should be able to put the piston in. I think what I might do is put a little bit more oil in the barrels. So obviously we will be turning this over a few times throughout the build. There we go. So we should now be able to push this home. There we go. And just line it up. And finally into the cylinder. So we've now got that one in. So I'm going to do the other 3. And I'll bring you back once we've got some more done. Now one thing worth remembering is the direction plate underneath here. So if you put that in, when the air comes down through the fan, down the centre of the cylinders, it then gets spread around this area and that helps cool the bottom of the cylinders. You can buy something called a cool tin. I think they were on type 3s. They're a slightly different design with 2 holes in the middle, and they're supposed to be even better. There's a little bit of a compromise with anything that you fit, but some say that they're good and others say no, don't use them. Now one thing I have done to try and spot any potential leaks is I've painted the new pushrod tubes in silver, so that if they're in that area there, obviously you've got your white at the ends. There we go. So you've got your white seals at the end, so you can potentially spot any oil leaks if any occur. So that's right. So we've now got the cylinder heads, the barrels on. We're ready now to put the heads on, pushrod tubes and pushrods in. So we've now jumped ahead a little bit, and we've got head fully assembled on that side, and as you can see, we've got the alternator stand fitted, and I'm just putting on this section. So we're just trying to tighten up on the nuts that we've got here. Obviously I'm only doing them finger tight at the moment. So we've got the correct thick walled washers. So we've now got the book out to tell us how much a two-stage tightening sequence is for the torque wrench. That's already set. So we'll go across and we'll tighten up these. So basically we've got a sequence. So number one is there. So we're going to bring that torque round till we get to a point where we've got the first setting on there. Number two's up here, so we'll tighten that one up. Number 7 is here. So we've now got to the point where we're going to start to fit the rocker gear. At first what we're going to be looking through is this little rubber selections that we got with the kit. And in here we've got some of these little O-rings. These fit on the stems, just there. Now we've put his push rods in already, so what we're going to attempt to do is put the rocker gear on. So we'll line up the rockers with the push rods, so we're not nipping the push rods as we go in. So I will torque these up later, but for now that's as they are. So now we've got a little bit of movement on that one, so obviously if we turn that engine over we'll get these moving. And obviously now check the others. Yeah, we've got clearance on them as well. So that's that bit done. We'll now move on to the other side and we'll carry on with that. So now we've done this side, we've got both sides done, we've done the gaps, we can then turn our attention onto the back of the case. So what we're looking at here is the end float on here. So I've already put on the paper gasket and the metal gasket. And what we're going to have a look at is what shims do we need in this engine to shim it up. So we'll give these a try for a start. So we've already put in as flywheel oil seal using a rubber mallet. So that's gone in okay. So we'll try with a few other shims first. We've already put the oil seal in the back of that. Can bring that on. So basically that's hand tight. Need a little bit more torque on this one. So we'll use the little tool there. Now this little tool is useful in that it does the 180 and it also does the 200. So it can lock into that set of cogs there. So that'll hold the flywheel steady while we try to tighten it up. So that's quite tight at the moment. So we've now got our extended bar and a 36mm socket on. We've used this previously on our motors and to get the back wheels off, or the back hub nuts off. And this is what we've been using basically to tighten the engine up. So we've got it as tight as we can. Don't have anything to go up to the torque setting that is required, but it's not failed me yet. So that just about wraps up the build. We've got a few extra items put on, like the rocker covers and the vents, obviously all the tinware and everything else, but that's basically the block assembled. So over the next couple of days we're going to be taking an engine out and putting all the tinware off that engine, painting it a different colour and installing it on this engine. So if you've liked what you've seen today, then obviously you can follow along with any future builds. If you want to give us that thumbs up, we would appreciate that. And also if you'd like to subscribe, then you'll see more of the camper build as we progress. But that's about it for today. So we'll see you next time. Bye for now.